Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm very happy that you are here with us today. I want to open the second session of today regarding the cyber-terrorism. This workshop is the Sylint workshop on cyber-terror. I hope that our discussion will be fruitful today because we have a set of presentations, and afterwards, if we'll have time, we'll have some kind of discussion. We build the presentation from different parts around the world and different subjects within the field of cyber terror. But before starting our presentation, I want to invite my friend and the head of this panel, Mr. Sylint, and then we continue. Please, Sylint.
During this conference, so many people have asked me, what is my background? Why am I doing this? I have no background in the military. I have no background in technology. This is all a sense of national security. I came here for the first time to the ICT about 15 years ago, and at that time, terrorism was hostage-taking. And I remember we had buses going to a stadium showing us how to disarm terrorists that captured a bus full of children. And then terrorism evolved, and it became organizational terrorism. And here we are on the edge of a new technology-driven terrorism. So I decided I wanted to fund the Department of ICT that would continue specializing just on this subject. And I'm very lucky to have Eitan Azani, who heads up this department.
I was lucky.
Okay, so we're mutual admiration society, okay? And why was I lucky? Because he has a research assistant named Nadine Leave, who's sitting in the first row here. And I asked him, how did he get a hold of her? And he said, all my students want to stay with me, and she's just one of them. And the reason I highlight her is because she wrote a summary of what they accomplished in the end of the first quarter. And one of the things that she accomplished for the department, she is known amongst her workers as a dark net warrior, jihad warrior. She trolls the place called the dark net that most of us know nothing about, looking for jihadists. And she discovered sometime in the very early year that there was a jihadi plot to bomb Wimbledon. And through the efforts of Eitan and his department, they informed the London Police Department and Interpol of this effort, and clearly no bomb. This is one of the small reasons why I invested in Eitan at the ICT, and I'm very happy for this dividend. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much. If you have another clandestine information to help us to convince him to invest more, please tell me. Okay, now our panel will be based on some speakers that will be one after the other. So what I try to do now, I try to describe who are the speakers and what are the topics that we are addressed during our discussions. And I hope that after they finish this discussion, we'll have the ability to have questions and answers. The first panelist will be me. So what I'm going to talk is about trend in cyber-terrorism through 2017, because every year we are analyzing, researching the development of the global jihadist, radical Islamists within the field of cyber terror. The next speaker will be Mr. Oren Elimelech. He is a cybersecurity expert and information security manager in the Ministry of Transportation and other places. And he will going to talk about the cyber threat for transportation and critical infrastructure from the technology point of view. Afterward, we have Professor Avram Wagner. Here it is. Adjunct Professor of International and Public Affairs and Senior Research Scholar in Saltzman Institute for War and Peace Studies in Columbia University, United States. He is going to talk about going dark. I had here two topics, but I wanted to talk about going dark. And I know that you will talk at the end of the day on what you want to talk, not what is written here. The next component is Paganini. This is the Chief Technology Officer of Cybers Enterprise and a member of ENISA Threat Landscape Group. He's going to talk about technology, key factors. He's here with us. Huh? Yes, sir. Oh, very nice. So you infiltrate into the stage without knowing anyone know about it. Next is Brigadier General retired Charles Shugg, Executive Director of Global Consortium for Counter-Terrorism and partner and COO Sylint, United States of America. I asked him to talk about American policy regarding countering cyber threat. As you can see, we try to analyze the threat, analyze it from the technological point, and analyze the policy of the international community regarding this threat. And the last lady, Advocate Deborah Hausen-Couriel, Research Associate in our institute and also fellow in the Interdisciplinary Center Research Center in Tel Aviv University. Deb will going to talk about regulation and countering international cyber terror. So as you can see, our discussions will started with the threat, continue with the level of the sum of the components of the response, and then ended with the regulation. So based on this topic, I want to take us every year trying to understand the area, the topics that we are dealing with, meaning the electronic jihad activities and entities. Because we call it cyber terror, they call it electronic jihad. And because they call it electronic jihad, they divided their electronic jihad into two different major areas of operation. One, they call it operational platform. They use the internet for their operation. The second component, they call it the technical capabilities because they use the internet for the other topic of technical capabilities to defense and to carry out an offensive operation. And for us, as people that trying to counter jihadi groups and counter terror, we need to be able to deal with these two sectors. Because on one sector, you can counter and understand the propaganda, you can understand the recruitment operation, you can understand the ideology, messages, and on the other side, all the things that connected to the operation. From the strategy of the operation, from the operation itself, from the financing of this group, and for the communication system. And you can find out that these operations are running from different parts of the system itself within the internet, from the open part of the internet to the dark web. And you need to be able to understand all these components from the open space of the internet to the darknet itself. As we mentioned before, we will discuss here today some component of the darknet itself. The next component that I want to describe within our discussions, these are the operational platforms that we can see and use by the internet themselves. And they are very sensitive regarding what kind of things they need to promote to their audience. When you have success with a track, you will find out what we want you to do is to carry out lone wolf attack by using track. Why? Because it's very easy, you can do it all over the world. So you can find out within the platform of the electronic jihad or within the platform of the internet, they deliver information to their audience to carry out this kind of operation. One, professional use of the internet for recruitment and propaganda. Second, support lone wolf attack. If there is a lone wolf attack that was succeeded, we support it. We show that you can continue operating based on this success. The next component that we can describe within the battle of the media. They started with the concept electronic jihad, and today you find the concept media jihad. Meaning our theaters of jihad is not only in the field, our theaters of jihad is also in the media. And we spend a lot of effort to operate within this infrastructure. So we'll see some component of the battle of the media. Next component is social network, because this group enter into these areas of social network. They developed within the field of social network for the open social network, Twitter, Facebook, to encrypted social network that is very difficult to gather information about them. And they establish channels of communication. In some cases, they are exploited our channels of communication within the internet. They upload information into open media, into archive, into Wikipedia, into other issues, and we see how they use these operations. Next component, funding or fundraising using digital data or digital currencies. You can find out very clearly how they take money and ask you to send this money through a wallet, a Bitcoin currency, inside the darknet without any hesitation. So we have different fields of operation when it comes to the jihadists themselves. I divided this concept of operation to propaganda and recruitment, and trying to understand within these areas of propaganda and recruitment how the new systems, how the new application help this group to carry out their operation by using the new technology that we are facing today. Regarding the propaganda, new technology caused them a shift from the use of classic websites at the beginning to use social network. And even more than that today, not only use social network, use an encrypted social network, okay? When it comes to recruitment, they use the social network that enable this group to take their audience and recruit their audience, not one-to-one, not one-to-many, many-to-many. You have today a lot of recruiters, a lot of agents within the internet that can recruit and influence people in different parts around the world. So we have this kind of recruitment. Technology regarding ISIS, they give ISIS a lot of capability because ISIS use the new technology. This is on one hand of the scale. On the other hand of the scale, it enables ISIS to narrow the message to a specific audience. If you want somebody that is within your core group, the message that you send him is different than the message that you send to your enemy. These kind of social networks, this kind of new technologies enable them to deliver the messages to their different audience. Next, enhance the effect of the attack by real-time broadcasting. You don't need to wait for somebody that promoted you within the internet. Immediately, everything is on the internet. You can have the information from the middle of the attack disseminated all over the world, and it give you more leeway to operate. New technology, safer environment. Meaning, we are entering into a new technology, and our operation is more safer because nobody can really find who is behind the message because it's encrypted messages, and this is what they did during the years. And there is a competition. On one hand, we need to understand, within this field of terror, there is a competition between this group, between Al-Qaeda and ISIS. They, from time to time, even on the cyber level, they attack one the other, then maybe we'll hope to see some operation. Everyone wants to be behind the lone wolf effort. Everyone wants to be behind the new successes. So they have this kind of competition all the time. Here you see some pictures of propaganda. I want you to see how they are very, very professional. They have the ability to capture the people's eyes. This is one of the things that developed during the years. Even if some cases the pictures are very problematic, but at the same time they are very professional and they affect the people that are entering into this field. Here they deliver and share information, data, to show that they have the upper hand in every place. So you have some examples. This is a very unique slide that I want to deliver to show it to the people because it shows how these organizations know to approach different audiences. Okay? You know, one of the trends during the last years is women that enter into jihad. So when we are discussing women that enter into jihad, although jihad, you have a lot of blood, is very problematic, when it comes to women, you know, it's a very nice color, okay? Very, very nice color. So you will see the differences between the way that you capture women to continue to look what's going on inside this kind of post. So within ISIS and within other groups, we see more and more enters inside this cooperation. And because I have Stern, that he is really one of the famous analysts regarding carried out a terror attack, here is the example of what you can find out within the social network of the radical Islamists and take these pieces of information and make them an information that can be useful for local police, for law enforcement and others. This piece of information was published in ISIS, one of the ISIS Telegram channels after the attack that was carried out in London. And it was during, it was published during the time that we had the Wimbledon case. And they sent people to carry out this kind of attack. And what they said, copycat Manchester. Meaning you can find information that can give you, you know, there is not a specific alert, but there is a general alert because they push people to carry out an attack on these areas. And you need to be aware because, you know, security agencies and police, when they have even general alert, they're doing some steps to protect their people. So this kind of information is very, very useful. And you can find it because they want to approach not only a core group of the organization, they want to approach a larger circle around this organization to carry out their operation. So you see that operational issues you can find also on the internet, not only the jihadists themselves. Regarding recruitment, a very useful pictures that was taken from different areas around the West and shows targets, ask people to do your jihad, ask other people to support the effort of lone jihad, meaning you can see more and more information that send people to carry out an operation. The next group of slides that you have here, I told you that the things were changes from electronic jihad into media jihad. Why into media jihad? Because in the media, 50% of our effort should be in the media, because it's a very useful tool. So you will find out a lot of posters that connected to the media jihad, that ISIS, for instance, or others publish information saying, you know, we have 40 security agencies that try to carry out an operation against us. We carried out, we have a lot of Twitter accounts, we have a lot of Facebook accounts, and we are doing this and we are doing this. Why? Because they want to convince that they are really have the upper hand with the media operation, and this is the thing that they are dealing with. And I want you to understand something very important. Although the caliphate collapsed, the virtual caliphate still alive, okay? And we find information from the early weeks, from the previous weeks, that even one of the provinces that we know that is not active anymore promoted information, idea, messages to people to carry out operation in their way. Meaning, if the real world is collapsed, it doesn't say that the virtual world is collapsed. And this is the media battle. This is the way that they are carried out jihad through the media arena. Another piece of propaganda you see regarding Iraq and Mosul. We are the winners because we killed a lot of non-Muslims, 199,000. Our media operation is very high. We see 41,000 clips we published during the last 3 years. We are really, as a caliphate, we are the winners. Okay, we are not in a situation that you can say that we really collapsed and we are not actor within this field. They build the reality into the virtual world for their audience. That's the thing that I want to understand, because the one that is sitting in and now is under a process of radicalization, is sitting in the West. What he sees here, this is the real world for him. It's because he's not on the field. He don't know what's going on in the field. The second layer that they need, that they will be able to carry out their operation, it's the operational redundancy. Meaning, I have a bank with all these social network capabilities. When you take one of my social network capabilities down, I have the capability to take it from the bank. This is what they share with their audience. And it's not only in the level of the headquarters of the organization. It disseminates to their audience, it disseminates to their followers, to their supporters. They, Facebook, Twitter, close your account. Here it is, a bank of account that you can add. This is that they build it in this way that enable them to carry out the operation. Here it's very problematic note. I think that today is not on the internet, but we find it in August, last August. 2 or 3 days after ISIS published Rumia number 12 or Rumia number 13. 2 days after ISIS published Rumia, we find this information on the Wikipedia. Okay, this is the Wikipedia site. Here are, if you want to know, to get information how to kill the Westerners, here you have all the Rumia publications, the link in Wikipedia, all the Rumia publications, and I don't know if you know, every Rumia publication is in 10 languages. So you can take it in every language that you want, and Wikipedia gives you these services. Very problematic. Because we don't know where is the, at the end of the day, where is the, the border between what we can publish and what we can support the terrorist groups. So if we are working very hard against, Twitter and Facebook, ask them to take down all these incitement information, and then you can find in Wikipedia all the incitement information of ISIS to carry out an attack against the West in English. This is really a huge problem. Another component that I want you to understand regarding the concept of ability of using the internet for operational, this is the Inspire magazine example. Last month, the Inspire magazine, a month ago, Inspire magazine published information how to carry out an attack on the transportation. This is one of the topics that we are going to talk today. Okay. How to carry out an attack on transportation. He gathered intelligence on transportation in the United States, and he gave his audience not only how to carry out the attack, also what to use a derail attack. And it's not only saying that you can use a derail attack for this operation. You don't need to go to buy a derail attack in the internet or in other places. We teach you how to build it. And they give them the information how to do it. So you can find out that they deliver messages, operational messages, to people all over the world. And I can tell you that this kind of attack carried out by using derail is a very, very useful attack, catastrophic attack in the other hand, okay? So they have these pieces of information. Next component that I want to share with you, this is financing. Because at the end of the day, financing is not new within the jihadi group. It's something that we know it. For many, many years, there are traditional channels to finance terror, and there are new channels to finance terror. One of the things that I want you to understand that this kind of a new channel of finance terror through the media, not only through the media, but also through the social network. And the example that I want to share with you, this is the example of the called Jahizuna campaign. Jahizuna campaign, if I translate it from Arabic to English, is equip us campaign. Okay? We want you to equip us. Okay? And they started this campaign in 2015. During this time, the most well-known social network was Twitter and Facebook, because they open social networks. So they deliver the messages through Twitter and other messages. When they enter the encrypted And now in Telegram, they had a very secure channel for their operation. So you can find out that the line of the operation runs through Telegram and enable them to carry out their operation on the ground regarding the Jaizuna campaign. They publish it on the social network. You see, they ask people to send them money, and they show these kinds of things. Here it is. Here it is. These are weapons. You need to pay just $2,500 and you can get these weapons or that weapon. Meaning they have the capability to convince their people. The second layer, that this is the reason why I said is encrypted, is within an encrypted information. You see there a correspondent with somebody that want to contribute. Within this correspondent, they gave him a Bitcoin wallet, a number of a Bitcoin wallet. Now you enter into this Bitcoin address, and they said, okay, send us money. Nobody, there is a huge problem, a huge, to enter inside this process. You need to have the numbers, you need to have the connection to the organization, you need to know who are the things, okay? But you can find here some kind of pattern that they use by this Jaizuna campaign. Defense. Until now, we talk about operational. As I mentioned before, they use the internet for two major issues. One for the operational, defense, and offense. Okay, two major components that they use. Here, regarding defense, the organization, specifically when the new technology enters, the jihadi groups understand that they need to build defense capability. Defense capabilities you always build in two different levels. One in the level of the organization, your people that are involved in supporting all your systems. Second, in the level of the people, education. Okay. So you can find out here that they have in online, I call it information security online. Okay, they have a sector. You want a security? Here it is. Kilafa information security online. Enter into this information and you get your information. You have recommendation. You have some publication that publish about how to deal with defense issues. And you have encrypted communication system. Meaning, within the defense, they cover all the topics. And I'm not saying that in 2016 and 2015 it wasn't. It was, but they always develop. And this is the most important thing that I wanted to take from my presentation. The cyber capabilities develop all the time because we are dealing with a learning organization, and they learn and understand what's going on the ground. So regarding software, you see different software. One of the things that they used during the last year, on-the-shelf operation. Meaning, I want to operate with encrypted social network. I don't need now to write a code and make a new application. You have it on the shelf. You have Telegram, you have Kit, you have Surface, you have Wicker, you have Bag. You can use this kind of operation from on the shelf. 2 or 3 years ago, it was only Twitter and Facebook. Today, you have everything within this book. And the second component, we have technical departments that give you an information what to do. Okay? So within the Global Islamic Media Front, this is one of the media outlets of Al-Qaeda, for instance, they are publishing security manual to their audience, how to open Twitter account, how to use Telegram, how to use encrypted application, how to use Tor. Everything is connected to a different layer within the field of the cyber that you are dealing with. Tor is going to be a darknet. Telegram is encrypted. Twitter is open, meaning they gave them all the security information that they need. Okay, so meaning that they are analyzing, understanding, and delivering the message of security information. As you can see, they sign as Kilafa Information Security. And they understand that they need to operate within this field of security because it's very important to their organization. So they open a Telegram channel, Telegram me, information security 6. Okay? Meaning, in our world, if I translate it to our world, they have a help desk. You need the support, here is your help desk. You don't need to go to the university to the help desk to ask. Here it is the help desk. We are technician, caliphate, you have a mobile issue. You need information, please contact us. Contact us and we'll give you the information. And in every, believe me, every jihadi group has its own capability regarding this field. If you need information, we can push you the information through website. We can push to you the information through the sectors in the Telegram so you can see a FAC media group deliver information through Telegram channels, through the information security, and through website that's called Halumu. People know where to enter to get this kind of information. And we also give you software like Tor, like VPN, like second number, fake GPS, and encrypted communication. We give you a lot of applications. We want you to use them if you want to be in a situation that you want to save and to secure your operation. Here it is one of the examples regarding a mentality of defense, okay? This is a warning, important warning that's published from time to time. They're published from time to time by ISIS. And these are important warning. You see what they're written here. The official Islamic State release are available only on Arabic language, Nashir. Something that everybody knows within the radical wing, what is the meaning of Nashir. Nashir channel on Telegram in an English language is horrible website. Don't download information from other websites because there are a lot of websites that look like similar. Don't download information because you can capture it and somebody can send, you know, some issues into your computer. They publish it, and they publish a lot of some kind of these posts after attack. So they said, we attack now, everybody's trying to attack us. Please don't do anything without any permission within the internet. Be careful. You can see here a magazine that discusses the security issues. Here we can go inside the offense operation. We describe operational, we describe defense, now we describe offense. Regarding offense operation, if I try to start with the situation report, our situation, meaning their situation, the jihadi situation, I can describe it high motivation, learning curve, low capabilities plus. Okay, they are not really in a medium capabilities of attack, they are not in a high capabilities of attack, they are low capabilities plus. By saying that, I don't want you to approach me tomorrow and say, Eitan, we say low capability plus, and we have a major attack on the bank that collapsed. Low capability plus in our areas of cyber, today it could be 10%, tomorrow it could be from 0 to 100, because they recruited a genius hacker that can do the work. Okay? So although we say what we know now is low capability plus, but it could be changed within a week. It could be changed in days because we are dealing with uncertainty world. Okay? This is the thing that I want you to bear in your mind. Cooperation, there is cooperation among terrorist groups, there is cooperation between terrorist group and state, and there is cooperation between terrorist group and criminal network. This is the most dangerous cooperation. Because state and terrorist group, we have only Iran and the terrorist group. But criminal activity, we have all over the world. Okay? And we know that they are having cooperation between terrorists and criminals within the real world, and we are sure that they have some kind of cooperation within the virtual world, because they are operating at the same time in this world and in this world. Short-term estimation, ongoing changes, level of the threat will increase. They increase the level of their knowledge in cyberspace because they learn all the time, as I mentioned before. They have availability of free cyber tools online, and my friend here tell me all the time that on the internet you have always free cyber tools online that enable you to attack other groups. So they have the access to these free online. In most cases, what they are doing, they are attacking by using a malware, a DDoS platform, defacement, all these operations that are very important to understand, but they are low-level attack. As I mentioned before, there are some changes within the field of the offense. What we can see that most of the cyber attack, as I mentioned before, defacement and DDoS operations, they attack university sites, symbolic sites, governmental sites. We see more and more involvement of Asian origin hackers, Indonesia, Philippines, these areas. And we see also that they have attacking media accounts. There were some attacks run by groups that attack Israel, Op Israel, and other type of attacks that they were not so important at the end of the day because they were blocked. One of the things that I want to discuss is WannaCry ransomware. The WannaCry ransomware started by criminals, and we find at least in one place that they try to copy it by the jihad. Okay? So they can take from the criminal activities some kind of operation and use it by these groups. Here is a story, a case study, and I finish with this case study and maybe another slide. A case study of a hacker called XOZGAR. This is from Indonesia, a hacker from Indonesia. He leads the hacking group Fighter Muslim Cyber Caliphate that were connected to United Cyber Caliphate. Okay? He carried out a defacement attack on the Indonesian government, and he also, the guy that posted, he copied the WannaCry a ransomware and tried to carry out an attack. This is the guy he killed by the American. Here you see the WannaCry ransomware, the original one, and how they copied by this guy that he belonged to a United Cyber Caliphate. Okay? So he attacked and he put his name on the same issue. Here you can see defacement, okay, used by this group. And from here, this is the ability of a jihadi group to operate together to attack some targets. So these are the list of the jihadist group that carried out the actor that participate in Op Israel 2017. Meaning a lot of cyber groups that operate together against Israel. Al-Qaeda also have these kind of groups. We want to bypass it. United Cyber Caliphate. One of the things that I want you to understand when it comes to countering electronic jihad or cyber terror is to understand who are behind the group that are operating, who is the hackers, what they are doing, how they unite, what their operation, from where they go, gathering information, like intelligence information about these groups from different sources and understand how to counter them. In the story of United Cyber Caliphate, they established United Cyber Caliphate in 2016. At the beginning, it was 4 or 5 groups. Today, United Cyber Caliphate, you can see that this is a body that enables a lot of radical cyber groups to operate under the same title. Meaning, we need to understand where these people are operating. As we mentioned before, some of them are from Indonesia and Southeast Asia and all these areas. Killing list started in 2015. We see also in 2017 killing list and another information about killing list, names, pictures, and in some places more information. You see how it's on the website. This is the way that the killing list is operating. Killing list and targeting this group, this is the example of Saudi Arabia. In Saudi Arabia, they have a killing list, and they have pictures of the people that they captured in the killing list, and they also posted a message, offered $5,000 for the head of the people, some of the people that are here. Meaning, we give you money if you carried out this kind of information. And I want to close my presentation trying to describe the major changes that we faced in 2017. One, that the main use still today, the main use of the internet by the global jihadists, as an operational platform. All the operations that these groups are on the internet. This is one thing that we need to understand. It's not cybersecurity in the way that we are referring to. It's operation. Okay? And this is target for our counter-operation. Okay? The second is that they use more and more new technology and platform. This is one thing that we need to bear in our mind. Defense, in general, increasing defense capability within the organization. Often, low capability, but from 0 to 100 it could be very quick. And you can see that one of the things that is very bothered us today is unification of IC cyber group. Because when you are unified, you have more resources to carry out your operation. And their focuses on the Western arena, and this is important to our discussion. Thank you very much. And next.
Works? Very good. So first of all, thank you, Azani, Eitan, and thank you, distinguished gentlemen, for coming here today at the ICT. Let's start the presentation. So we're going to talk about, my name first of all is Oren Elimelech. I'm delighted to be here. We're going to talk about cyber-terrorism transportation and critical infrastructure. I work in the Ministry of Transport in Israel as lead cybersecurity expert. I do govern the transportation segment in Israel. I also work in the EU part-time with mass land transportation cybersecurity working group. But my main focus where I work in is protecting critical infrastructures, basically in transportation, naval, aviation, freight, train, buses, which is mass critical transport. I have some experience where I consult to banks and other financial institutions in Israel and around the globe, specifically US. So we're going to talk about transportation cyber threats. We're going to talk about aviation threats, where I see them, and train threat, public transportation, and some other things. If you have any questions, of course, you can feel free to ask in the end. It's in the end of everything, at the end of the entire commence of the session. So, as I like to say, this used to be an apocalyptic movie out of a Die Hard movie. Okay, you'd have seen Bruce Willis come here and say, imagine everything falling into darkness and everything is going to a standstill. This is no longer just a movie script. This is real life. This is what we're facing today in my work and actually in everybody's life. Okay, this can happen. This scenario where terrorist group, hackers, as I see them, and Professor Azani was very preparing the presentation for me because we see hackers working today and getting too much control over systems. And terrorist groups are actually following, and most of the time are even part of those hacker groups, and they learn from experience. Today, there are many, many tools we're going to discuss now that are absolutely available, which are state-level tools, which is no longer script kiddies tools or beginners tools. This is state-level sponsored with multiple years of experience that are actually available, as we've seen, to everybody. So today our life, everything, our economic vitality, everything is relying on cyber. Everything is connected. The world is connected. Our mobile phones, our computers, our television. Okay, I have Alexa at home, which I bought from the US. It's connected. Our electricity, our transportation, everything is connected. And if you happen to fly here for Israel, when you fly everywhere on the globe, you have a barcode on your plane ticket. Think about what's hidden inside that barcode. You throw it so negligibly in the airport. You actually have all your details, all your information, your personal life, your telephone number, your social security number, okay? Your address, that is on your plane ticket. It's barcoded. With a simple barcode scanner, you can get that information. That is private information, okay? That is something that only today has been recently been referred to as something sensitive that people should take into notice in protecting their life and their information. So, transportation segment where I work is including multiple areas, mass transit, aviation, naval, traffic and transit control. Everything is connected. Everything is controlled by a computer. When you drive your car, it is controlled by several technologies, okay, that are connected and can be influenced, okay. I've done a research where I'll share with you some information regarding trains in Europe and US and Canada. And I was surprised to see the effect and how systems are connected together. I've got a very simple video just to show you a simple vehicle hack. So, try to find this. Yes, no. All right. Every car since 1988, BMW has developed what is called a CAN bus. Every car in the world in the last, since more than about 10 years ago, has been standardized to the same protocol, which is CAN bus. Okay, every car has it. If you open up your car, there is an OBD connector, which is really simple. That bus is directly attached to the vehicle's computer. Okay, and this is a simple movie. I have this device at home in my car here. If somebody wants, after the presentation, to go to my car, I can show him the device. Okay, this is a simple, basic movie, how you can control the car. And this is simple in a garage. There's also movies regarding Chrysler, but it's something that we've done. Connected to the car. You buy it on Amazon, $49.95. And this is just the mileage, okay? And you control it remotely, either Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, but you can just change the information in the computer. Really basic. It helps to sell your car with a low price. So this is quite simple. This bus is directly connected. And if this is remote, you can access it. And why do I mention this? I mention this quite simply because I'm currently consulting a company that has work in Israel and around the globe. Let's find the presentation button. All right. So I consult a company, and most cars today have some sort of tracking device, okay, that enables them. Actually, federal US regulation dictates that all federal cars should have some tracking device that are able to know where they are, where there's location. Actually, they released a year ago that they want to have security to protect that location services. It protects against theft, etc. But that enables remote hacking to the car. And I'm assisting a company here in Israel and the US that has about more than 1 million cars. And I was able to see and get the connection. It took us less than half a day. And I was surprised to see that it's so simple that nobody thought about security. Usually, we think there is IT, information technology, and there's OT, operational technology. Most transportation and critical infrastructure is based about OT, operational technology. You don't think about the security. It's built to give service. It's built to give availability, okay? And because of that, you don't think about security, and the technology is not as resilient. It's resilient in terms of availability, but not in terms of security. Security was not built in. You're trying to bolt it on, and that is a problem. And just for reference, the protocol is clear text, no password, you can access it, no credentials. So I was able to get a control of the car within half a day, and it was basic. All I need to do was take a device, take the SIM out, connect it to my computer, and I was inside the network. And there I can do pretty much everything. It's all a matter of time. And hackers and terrorist organizations have a lot of time and money. And you can think about the exploitation of that and grow exponentially. So most, as I said now, systems in critical infrastructure interpretation is built upon ICS and SCADA systems. ICS and SCADA system are used today to control power control, emergency ventilation control, alarms, sensors, fire, train, buses, bridges, tunnels. Everything is controlled by those peripherals. Whether it's an actuator, a sensor, or a control, it enables remote control of that. And those areas of compromise are critical. And some system, you can control it remotely via radio or via GSMR, okay? There was a research released here 2 years ago in April by Nir Turjuman and myself regarding trains. And we've witnessed trains that have GSM control able to enable its location base. But if you buy a jammer, a $33 jammer, and you block the GSM signal, it stops the train. Okay, that's amazing, $33. And these stuff are amazing. So the problem is, as I mentioned, that operational technology was not thought about in terms of security. And take, for example, this is a picture I took from a plane. This is a floppy drive, okay? Pretty simple. You have a floppy drive on an airplane. I don't mention which airplane it is, but you can actually update the firmware. And that is the firmware of the plane, and you do that. But what happened is the firmware of the floppy, a $1 floppy is faulted. That will happen to British Airways a few years ago, where they stopped the computer of an airplane because the floppy was corrupted. In today's plane, let's take, for example, the 787, the Dreamliner. Somebody knows what's the data connection for the Dreamliner? You have a guess? I'll give it to you. It's either Wi-Fi or either cellular. That is the channel to update the plane. No longer floppy, not even USB. It's wireless. And think about it. Think about exploiting that. And you can even go simple. You pretty much, this is another plane, and there is an instruction here, and I was surprised to see that they have the password written on the label. I don't want to zoom in, but that is the password for the wireless network inside the plane. So that was amazing. So, regarding aviation threats, on January, the India Director General of Civil Aviation has reported that he suffered a problem, a very serious IT problem, and they lost all the data from August 25, 2015. They lost all the data regarding planes, security, flights, reporting, statistic database. They don't have that information. It took them a year and a half to report that because they were so scared. Okay? And that is a problem. Sometimes you know, sometimes you don't know. But think about the effect if somebody deletes all the information on planes, maintenance, the bolts, the security, the engine, the trial, the test. Hey, you just need to delete the data. You don't need to hack. You just delete the database, and the plane will drop itself from the sky by itself. Just think about that. And last week, Equifax had a problem, the same thing. They were breached in May 2017, and they did not know it until last week. And that is a very serious breach that happened recently, just last week. And I'll give another example. Lot Airport, Lot Airline in Warsaw, in Poland. They suffered in June 21st, 15, they suffered a cyber breach. That is the first reported cyber breach in aviation. And that breach happened because there are computers in every airport. And every plane needs to update the flight plan because it needs to know how to approach the runway, how to get to it. What is the altitude, what's the direction, and everything. And somebody was able, a hacker, and it's reporting here, I took the picture directly from their website, where they admit they were cyber breach, the Lauder airline company, and he took the computers down of the flight computers, not on the airport, but on the airport itself, not on the plane. But what if he didn't turn it off? What if he would have changed the altitude of the location of the airport? He just would have, hey, minus 30 meters. And somebody would approach the runway with a different altitude. You need to look by eye, but not all the time it's that apparent. So FAA acknowledged that, and since that time, as a lot of security is being placed by either ICAO, CANASO, and other FAA and TSA, which I work with the TSA in the US, in improving security in aviation field. And there's a lot of incidents that have reported in the media, and I've took multiple images of that. And it's so fragile that it's just waiting to happen. And it's been going on and going on in aviation all the time. And guess what? The US Government Accountability Office warns the FAA at the beginning of this year about the vulnerability of the computers and the Wi-Fi networks regarding the airplane. And this is the link. You can read the report by the US Government Accountability Office. And I'll give you another quiz, quick quiz. How many computers are on board the 787, the Dreamliner? Somebody want to throw a number? How many computers on board? How much? 5. Another number? 50. Go up, go up. 87, go up. 150, go up. Go up. Quickly. More. More. Almost 1,500 computers on board 1787. That is a flying data center. Almost 1,500, 1,487. That is an exact number. And that is crazy number of computers upon one airplane. I don't want to tell you the length of the wires. So the regulation have noticed this is a problem. And today it's considered the most imminent threat, cyber threats on the aviation field. And this is what I look in. Everybody, FAA, EASA, ICAO, CANASO, ACI, have all agreed this is something serious, and they have working groups regarding that field. And hey, I think it's just a matter of time. Something will happen. Because if you have so much threat and so much vulnerabilities, somebody's going to take use of that. And hey, we're still lucky, hey, but we need to be cautious. Second tier. So if we're looking at second tier, which means interconnectivity. And there are systems on ground and on the airplane and also in critical infrastructure that can influence us. Okay? It doesn't have to be directly attached, and I'll give an example. But this is the complexity of the aviation. And the amount of systems that you have on the ground to support the airplane is huge. Whether it's GBAS, which means the ground-based augmentation when you reach the runway, okay? Whether it's the ABS itself, whether it's GPS, whether it's GSM, where it's location by satellite, everything is connected. And everything can be influenced with the right technology. And why do I mention that? Because I don't want to go into too much detail. I know I don't have a lot of time. But this can actually damage, and you can actually manipulate and damage the system. And I'll give you just a small example. Okay, this is from my colleague in the TSA, they shared with me. But in Newark Liberty Airport, they had some problems that was not consistent. From time to time, they lost the GBAS system, which is the GPS location when you approach the runway. The final approach, he needs to know where it is. Okay? And that system used to, sporadically, sometimes work, sometimes don't, and he couldn't figure out why. Okay? So that system is located on the New Jersey Turnpike. Okay? It's on the ground. So they had a problem. They couldn't find out. It took them months to find out, but in the end, after an FAA investigation, they found out that, there was a truck driver that he didn't want his boss to follow him, so he bought a GPS jammer at $33, and when he passed the turnpike, it stopped everything. They didn't have the system, and guess what? Here's the picture. So you have the system here, and that's the truck. They had to stop traffic to find out about that, and just think about it. That is a $33, and that is $1 million system. And sometimes it's the easiest way. Hackers usually choose the simplest route, the same as water. Okay? Think outside the box. And that is an example. And this is something that I've done a test. You know, you have flight radar. It's a very nice site. You can see all the plane, all the flights. Okay? And what I've done is I created inside the site, I wanted to see if we can spoof a plane. And so that is, you have air traffic control system. So we invested about $2,000, and we created your mom, okay? In Hebrew, you say be'imah shcha. So your mom plane, it took us $2,000 just to create a plane, a spoof plane in the air. And think about that if you want to do other things. So I can go on and speak about second tier, but the problem is that you have systems that are connected. You have what is called a cascading effect. You're not directly attached, but you have a secondary tier that is connected. And I'll just go a bit forward, but this is something from the EU group which I work with. And what I did a research that governs about 22 countries. And I wanted to find out how many train systems have some sort of connectivity. And remember, trains, critical infrastructure, transport of life, okay? And that can be definitely used by terrorists. For derailment, it could be a derailleur that they explained online how to build, but it can also be controlled. And if you know there is the train going from the Eurostar, going from France to UK and to Belgium, in our report in April 2 years ago, there are 7 systems which had control of this, that are upon that train, that had simple password. And I mean simple password, I mean the 1, 2, 3, 4 digit. Okay, just think about that. And so the cyber threat is there. Hackers just need to find it. And it's not that hard because it's published everywhere, as Azani has gracefully told us. But somebody want to guess what the number of trains, the number of systems that somehow are cascaded connected on a train, which is supposed to be totally disconnected? What is the percentage of whether it's directly attached, secondary, or even second tier attached to some sort of network, whether it's internet or it's not? Maybe just to know when the train is arriving on your mobile phone. Want to think about, somebody want to give a percentage number? So we looked at, we're going to get to that, we looked at connectivity, lease line, wireless, fiber optics. What is it used for? Operational, logistics, finance. So you need all this connectivity, but in the end, and this research was done just last year, we took what systems, what they control, ventilation, traction, automatic vehicle, traffic control, gas. So in the end, after looking at everything and what type of controls, actuator, and the sensor they had, we got a number, and interconnectivity. So in the end, almost 80%, 73, 74% have some sort of connectivity on what is supposed to be totally isolated. Trains. Just think about that. That is crazy. And this is part of the questionnaire that I've done. I don't want to go through much on it, but it's really, really critical, and those areas can be compromised. And I want to talk about something a bit out of here, is about the tools that Azani mentioned. Last Saturday, recent Saturday, September 9th, it was released upon WikiLeaks, a new tool by the NSA. WannaCry was just one of the tools, but today there is AngelFire, and this is even a more up the ante. It's a multi-stage, multi-model tool that can actually live after you format the drive. Amazing. It can update itself, receive updates and everything. And this is just amazing. And it's, hey, this is state-level tools released by the NSA. And because upon that release, hackers, and I surf the web, I surf the dark web, and I see tools, and people are using those without knowledge and know the effect, and definitely can be used by terror organizations and other hackers around the world. And this is amazing, because this is a very, very high level of tools that can be used. And AngelFire is just one of them. And the vulnerability is amazing. And if you take those tools on transportation, critical infrastructure, to get that breach of secondary level, you can definitely have a cascading effect and reach critical infrastructure and have an effect on that. And that is an amazing thing. And sometimes I don't sleep at night. If you look, Azani mentioned the statistics. I don't have it in this slide, but I have a different slide that I've done recently in China. I summarized 2016. And in 2016, the amount of breaches, if you look at hacker worlds, out of the top 5 of all times, 4 of them happened in 2016, which is amazing. And if you summarize the amount of attacks happened in 2016, okay, in the end of the year, and you have several sites, such as Hackmageddon, which is a very good site. 2016 was a very good year for hackers. And 2012, 13, 14, and 15 together does not reach the 4.5 million hacks only reported in 2016, which is amazing. And by the way, 2.98 were in US. So this is quite amazing. And regarding buses, for example, and this is the Metronet in Haifa, I was surprised to see that they have a network cable on the back of the driver's seat. So quietly, I took the cable connected to my laptop, and I was able to see the network. And they fixed it since then, but this is just an example. And I was recently in Washington. I don't want to say which bus line, but I saw something similar. Insider threats. 2 minutes, thank you. Insider threats, this can happen definitely, and this is an example of insider threats. In a major city in US, there were the laborers inside the city. They had a negotiation about salaries, and the negotiation got to a standstill. So you know what they did? They stopped all the lights. And the light flickered for 3 days, okay? And if they could do that, think about what hackers can do. And I'll just go through it quickly. Wild carrier, etc. But this is something quite interesting in 2011, which I like, and Professor Azani will agree with me. In British Airways, a worker, Rajib Karim, okay, it's a very something that we're proud of. He was disciplined of Anwar al-Awlaki, and he wanted to do a bombing on the British Airways. And he worked for British Airways. And he created 2 employees that were supposed to come inside the IT systems and to do the bombing. And that was reported to British Airways, and that was something that was stopped. And it's quite amazing, just think about the insider threats. So I'll quickly just mention one more thing. Rajib, what? Rajib Karim. Yeah. So, yes, definitely. So, one last thing. Here it is. Regarding cars. So, everybody here owns a car, right? And you open the car with a remote control, even myself. And this is something you can buy. It's $195, just bought it. And have a look. This is a simple tool with a computer, and it records your car signal, RF. It's actually 483 kilohertz, most cars. And once you can open the car, he locked the car, he recorded that, and he replays the signal. And that is freely distributable. That is off-the-shelf tools that we need to deal with. And I have some other videos about, that is actually just a tool, and somebody in Israel managed to improve that. I think I'll put the video next time. He did all the signals, and he created a universal remote control that opened all the cars. Azrieli Tower, in the garage, we have a video. We tried, I think, 25 cars. It worked on all of them. It's a universal, they sell it for $100. Amazing. So it's quite amazing the amount of threats that we have today in critical infrastructure that we want. So thank you very much, and it was a pleasure here.
Thank you very much, Oren, for making us very optimistic. and now I ask for another optimistic guy to approach the stage.
Can you find the charts? I'm going to do the going dark one. Kind of here. I don't know what he's going to let me do here. I don't know. What does it make any difference?
I think it'll help you better. Yeah, I'll put it on, please.
Make you more free.
It will be easy.
They may be luckier if they don't hear me.
Just put it in there.
Thanks very much. I appreciate the invitation to appear here again. This is the 17th ICT conference, and I think I've spoken at 13 of them now. One day I'll get it right, and I'm appreciative of my good colleague, friend, and neighbor in New York, Steve Stern, for his long-term interest in this area, which is increasingly important. What I'm going to talk about today, at least the first part of it, is a study that's been going on or just finished up for about a year, which we call Going Dark, and it talks about the implications of an encrypted world. At the end of this thing, I'm going to bring up a slide. This is not simply my work, it's the work of a team of some 16 people. It was largely funded by the United States government, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, the home of the internet and cyberspace. They take no responsibility whatsoever for what I'm saying here, even though the people there are techno geeks and they couldn't keep their hands off giving me lots of advice along the way, but a lot of it was enormously positive. What I'm going to do is break this into a couple of pieces and talk at the beginning about some issues in cybersecurity in general, and then start talking about the specific issues of encryption and its impact on terrorism. And even though I'd like to get in a war with Azani, I'm going to basically amplify some of the comments he made, and they're entirely consistent about where we're going in this area. So we're agreed on all of this. There is a bit of a debate on this subject in the United States, and one of the reasons that our group undertook the study, and the group consisting not only of myself, but 6 or 7 people out of the National Security Agency, DARPA, and a couple of other places that hide under rocks, is that we are not all agreed in the United States about where this is going, and I'm going to give you a somewhat more pessimistic view than a couple of the other studies that are floating around. This has the going dark business means, and I'll get into it in some detail, the use of security and encryption technologies that basically inhibit people on the outside from seeing what's going on, whether those people are the intelligence security services, the law enforcement agencies, or even hackers who may want to look at what you're doing. We've seen, as Azani has said, and we've been looking for years, increasing use of encryption and encrypted applications and security measures by terrorists, as well as other sorts of criminals and people that are of interest to the law enforcement intelligence services. One of the other things that we looked at some length in this study, which I'm not going to talk about much today, is the legal regime in which this operates. And in the United States, the Fourth Amendment right to privacy, the impact there. What I am going to talk about briefly at the end are some of the possible or not possible technical solutions and policy implications. I sort of start out by saying there's a problem in the American character That is, Americans tend to believe because there's a problem, there's a solution, and the corollary to that is the solution probably involves technology and money. This is one area where that may not be entirely true as a general rule, and I'm going to get back to that. I want to talk a little bit about solving the cybersecurity problem in general, just as an introduction here. The problem of cybersecurity in general is not going to be solved completely. It's really an asymptotic relationship. We're going to eventually conquer some of the major problems, and I'll talk about those. One of the reasons that we are starting to conquer some of these things is that users are demanding better security and privacy. They see they've been hacked. They see their data's been stolen. They see bad things are happening. And where years ago they did not pay this kind of attention, they are now, and this is sort of, if you're an economist, it's a demand-driven function. The other thing I'm going to talk about at some length here is that for the first time in world history, there are some low-cost solutions to these problems. They don't involve very costly electromechanical devices. And in a couple of minutes, I'm going to show you a picture of one of these ancient, costly electromechanical devices that used to be used. And the marginal cost, for those of you who study economics, the marginal cost of increased security and privacy is zero. The chips in your phone and your devices are already there. They're high-power processors. You're not buying another chip. You're not buying more software. The stuff you're using is either part of a package you get or downloadable for nothing. So the marginal cost really is free. And what do we know about marginal economics? If the cost is free, people tend to use it. And we're trying to deal now with some known and evolving vulnerabilities. And one of the points Azani made, and I'd like to amplify a lot, is this is a very dynamic world. He talked about the terrorist path. I want to say that parallel to that, there's a technology path. It does not stop. You turn on the TV this morning, what's happening? They're coming out with the iPhone 8 or the iPhone X. Every 18 months, there is a new generation of technology. There's a new generation of software. The 5 or 6 encrypted applications he mentioned, Telegram, or the others. 5 years ago, we won't even remember those names. There'll be new apps. There'll be better stuff. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So there is a technology path which is unstoppable. The United States Congress can't litigate and stop it. It's a world market. So there's a lot of things going on, that there's a dynamic that is in process which forces the dark function. And most of the solutions that we're talking about to the security and privacy problem in general involve encryption. So we'll get to that. One of the things that is worth thinking about, and this is a point that was given to me by one of my colleagues at DARPA, who's a cryptologist. He was actually the office director that paid for the study. But in any event, it's something that I've been thinking about since it was suggested, is there is a new paradigm in the world now. In the last couple of years, users are no longer in control of their own data. In the old world, the analog world, data was in physical form. It was a piece of paper, it was a document, it was something, and you could control it. If it was a very important thing or a very valuable thing, you could go to the bank and give them $75 a year and lock it up in a safe deposit box. If it was not so sensitive, maybe you put it in a drawer at your house or in a file at the office, but you had control of that data. That world is gone. Traditional security and privacy that we had then, bank vaults, locks, keys, that stuff is gone. We're in a digital world. Users are no longer in control of their data. It's not in physical form. Your personal data is in digital form. It's all over the place. Your doctor's office, he used to have a paper file. Now it's an electronic file. Well, HIPAA may control it in the US, but it's hackable. Your bank, you used to get a piece of paper in the mail and maybe they had some paper records. Your stuff's all on a computer. It might get hacked. I'm coming over here in the airplane. What happened? Experian got hacked. The data on 143 million Americans got stolen. Did they have any control of it? Absolutely not. And all the other credit bureaus, you cannot control your own data. And you can't control what's done with it. They sell it to people. I mean, this is a radically different world. You cannot control your own data. What's the corollary to that is the communications of that data and the storage of that data are highly vulnerable. Exploits, hacking, and very limited encryption. Every time you turn around, there's a gargantuan hack. whether it's the OPM files of our security clearance data, whether it's Experian and financial data, or everything else. It's hackable and you have absolutely no control over it, and it's not well protected. I want to talk about the early days of cyberspace. When DARPA invented the internet, 1960s, there weren't any cybersecurity problems. There wasn't any way to get or hack the net. You had mainframe computers, costly lease lines. There wasn't anything to steal. There was no content. There was no e-commerce. There were no banks connected. There was nothing worth taking. Nothing was connected to the network. The electric power grid, the sewer systems, no SCADA systems. The net was not a mass communication medium. Email wasn't even part of the original contract. Ray Tomlinson did it at night on his own and just donated it. If you ever look at your email, you see this thing, the SMTP, the Single Mail Transfer Protocol. Ray did it at night on his own and just donated it. And the denial of service attacks were largely impossible. The only way you were going to deny service in those days was to go out with a pair of pliers and cut a leased line or blow up a router, which used to be called an IMP. So, I mean, when we started all of this at DARPA or ARPA as it owned those days, there weren't any problems. And for those of you who like historical pictures, this is the absolute first communication ever by the internet. There's Len Kleinrock at UCLA. That monstrous piece of junk by his side is the world's first router, then called an IMP. They're there at their computer, and they tried to send a message to the computer at Stanford. It crashed, and there are the notes from Ray's logbook. They later got it to work, so, you know, this is the equivalent of Morse sending his message, what had got wrought. This is, and if you go to UCLA, Kleinrock is still giving tours of the lab, but in any event, when did this become an issue? Okay. When we gave away the ARPANET to the internet in 1989, 1990, it exploded it grew like crazy. There was now stuff to steal. There were users to annoy. There was potential for damage. It was possible for hackers and others to get to the net. One of the great problems is the 1990s, just after we created the commercial internet and cyberspace. It was a decade of bad policy and missed opportunities. We lost a decade. The network expanded, exploded beyond belief, and it wasn't secure. The US government programs in those days were minimal, they were underfunded, or they were killed. Cyberspace was not treated as a national resource. The other talk I'm probably not going to give today, which is the policy transition plan for the Trump-Pence transition we sat on, and I chaired. This is one of the major themes in there. The United States, simply has not treated cyberspace and the infrastructure as a national resource. Everybody thought it was somebody else's job to fix it. It's reflected in the Clinton administration PD 53 exercise I sat on. It was done recently on the Obama PDD 21 exercise. We failed to promote policies and effective security development. The commercial firms that could help were not integrated with the government agencies. And the last line here, and for those of you who are in the US government, the US government was really the pig at the trough. You know, every US government component, the military, the intelligence community, all elements of the US government became massive users of the internet and paid absolutely nothing to secure it. The funding for research, development, security was trivial at best for over a decade. We dug this hole we're in now, and that's when it happened. To talk a little bit about encryption, which is one of the ways this is going to get solved. For most of world history, encryption was analog. It was an analog world. It was expensive, and it was a commercial disaster. One of the famous encryption devices, and I'm going to show you a picture in a minute, was the German Enigma machine during the Second World War. Well, the Enigma machine, Scherbius built the Enigma as a commercial device. He went bankrupt. He was taken over by the SS. It was a commercial device. Nobody wanted it. And every other commercial device like that also went bankrupt. Nobody wanted it. It were expensive machines. Only the military and the intelligence services needed them, and they forced to use it and pay for it. I keep giving this same talk as Wagner's law of encryption. Users won't use encryption if it costs money, if it involves any inconvenience, or it degrades quality. And sometimes it's all of the above. Well, the world has changed. The encryption you're seeing today, whether it's Tor or Telegram or what, it doesn't cost anything, okay? There's no inconvenience. You send the message encrypted, it's not very hard, and it's all digital. Either it works or it doesn't, so there's no degradation of quality. For any of you who are old guys like me that used to use the secure telephones of the old days, you know, that were encrypted, they sounded like Donald Duck. I can remember being in Israel after the 73 war, having a discussion with the Deputy Secretary of Defense, Bob Ellsworth. I was at the embassy. We had to unlock this damn secure phone. And the only thing I could hear Ellsworth telling me over the phone is, "Will you get the hell out of there and find a real payphone? I can't understand a damn thing you're saying." So the quality was bad. The digital world avoids all of these analog problems. It's all software. There's no marginal cost. There's no inconvenience. And there are no quality issues. All the problems have gone away. And for those of you who have never seen one before, this sort of illustrates a problem. This is the guts of an Enigma machine. The rotors, the wheels, the plug boards, and some German guys using it. Why is it expensive? You had to make all of these fine parts. It cost a lot of money, and it was a pain in the ass. In order to do it, you had to set the rotors, and every day you had to take this plug board, which is down on the right, and change the keying. Nobody wanted this inconvenience, and it cost a bunch of money. No wonder we went bankrupt. So if you haven't seen an Enigma before, this is what one looks like.
So you are still in the introduction?
No. And I'm not going to take 48 minutes here. Okay, the United States government approach to encryption has been a problem. Originally, we tried to control the technology as a national security concern. We lost that one in court. The battle over university research in cryptology went away in 1999. That failed. We tried to put legal limits in failed programs. That didn't work. We tried to ban the quality of algorithms. You know, at one point, it was illegal to distribute algorithms there were better ones available on the internet, so that didn't work. We tried some really stupid things like this Clipper chip thing at the FBI that went down in smoke, key escrow, a whole series of stupid ideas. So everything we've tried and continue to try are bad ideas. They're not going to work. I'm not going to talk about this at all because I'm going to skip on that. So what are we doing in control of the technology today? Not well. We're trying to control it through the Arms Export Act, the Wassenaar Arrangement, which is a bad idea. The fundamental point here is any control of encryption is fundamentally beyond U.S. control. We can't control the proliferation of the algorithms, which are a key to this worldwide. You got some commercial firms located in Ireland, started by guys who used to be in the KGB. The Wassenaar Arrangement, which is an effort to control exports, is a stupid idea and went away. I'm not going to talk about this. We're going to take questions later about some of the legal cases going on in terms of encrypted applications and access. The one that's still in debate is the FBI versus Apple case where we were somewhat involved. Going dark is the ultimate nightmare. You're going to have end-to-end encryption as a commercial reality. Apple and the others are going to do it. The US government has lost this battle, and you can't crawl back to an earlier legal regime. And the suppliers can't comply with court orders. You can't give the Apple computer company a court order to bust into a phone and create software that can't be created. And we can talk a little later about why it was possible for an external firm to bust the San Bernardino phone and you can't in the future, but you can't do that. And what is the ultimate impact on places that need to get to the data, whether it's NSA or law enforcement? They're very, legal economic barriers are going to do it. And so the golden age of signals intelligence, being able to access this data easily, is over. Whether or not you're going to have some very sophisticated and costly technical workarounds to bits and pieces of the problem, maybe. But as a general rule, it's gone, and you're going into an era where it is basically going dark, and you're just not going to see that stuff. I'm not going to talk about the series of challenges. We can get to that with some questions. And I'm going to finish up here early.
No, it's okay.
Okay. I will leave some time for some questions. But, you know, these are the wonderful people that worked on this study. There's actually 3 or 4 others that, for various personal and political reasons, were unwilling to step up and provide their names to this work. But, you know, it really was a major effort on the part of a number of people to take a look at where the world is going here and where you can and cannot stop it. And the result of the study effort here is not only the terrorists, but the criminals are going to be in a position which is fairly unfortunate for the law enforcement and security services that are trying to access this kind of data over the coming years. And when we're holding this conference, you know, a few years from now, it will be a far different world. So I'll stop there, and if you've got questions on this, or, you know, the current planning for the U.S. government in this area, with that many of these same people participate in, I'll be happy to entertain them. You bet.
Thank you very much, and please, the next speaker, Paganini.
I'm being hacked.
Something optimistic? You're optimistic?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
As you prefer. Okay, first of all, let me thank you. I'm very excited and I'm very proud to be here today. Today we will speak about the role of technology and the relationship with the terrorism. What is happening and why technology is so important for modern terrorism. First of all, let's see which is the current scenario. We are facing a global alert. We are facing terrorism that is exploiting the internet. The internet, as you know, cyberspace is a domain without boundaries. So basically, these guys can work everywhere in the world and can hit in every moment every kind of target. We are all exposed. By most of all, one of the greatest concern for governments, law enforcement, and intelligence agency are the lone wolf. So individual that could be radicalized by internet, by person that use social media, and could act alone. They can hit targets from everywhere in every time, but they can find everything they need online. These are just a couple of slides that represent the number of attacks in the last months made by Al-Qaeda and by the Islamic States. And here we have also the timeline of the attacks. But you have to consider that they aren't the unique group that are using online, they are using internet. But which is the rule of technologies today? Basically, the first thing that I have in mind is that today terrorism is something that is choreographic. They are using technology in order to bring terror in our home. And they are using technology basically for 2 main reasons. The first reason is to amplify the attack, to distribute the fear, okay? But a second goal of these guys is to make propaganda at the same time. At the same time, they are saying, hey guy, we are able to do this, you are not secure in any way, and we can hit you in any moment. Just to give you an idea of which is the presence online of a terrorist group, which is the presence of terrorist content. Let's see information that was shared a couple of years ago by Professor Gabriel Weyman. He said basically that in 1998, there were just 12 websites that were spreading terrorist content. 5 years later, we had 2,500. In 2015, we have around 10,000 websites that was spreading terrorist content. And now you can imagine that probably that number, that figure is tenfold. But why internet? Basically because we have simple access, so everyone with a simple connection can access from everywhere worldwide. There is a poor controls of the resources that are published on the internet. Under specific circumstances, we can ensure anonymity. Okay, that's for example the use of darknet that the professor explained it before. But one of the most interesting aspects of modern terrorism is that it's interactive. Okay, using technology, they can be close to the person. They are close to the victims because they are sharing a post with image of an attack, but they can also close with sympathizer. So it's quite easy for them to make propaganda today. And of course, it's cheap, and they can reach instantaneous wide audience. Which are the main usage, main abuses of technology made by terrorists? Of course, propaganda. Let me say also psychological warfare. So they do exactly what the governments are doing today. So they spread fake news. They use social media in order to affect specific portion of people in specific area of the planet, changing the sentiment on specific conditions. Of course, they can make recruitment, fundraising, data mining information. Consider that, for example, if you need to arrange, you have to prepare an attack, probably online you will find all the necessary information about the target. We have the possibility to use internet as a secure channel of communication. We can move cyber attacks against critical infrastructure. Of course, we can distribute software. And this happened, for example, for mobile applications that were used to protect communication in a first phase of a usage of internet as an encrypted communication channel. You can also buy fake documents. And the last, you can also make a training. So you can instruct people how to use specific application. How can they build a bomb inside their home? But one of the most interesting aspects, for sure, is the internet propaganda. Okay, today they are very skilled in use modern technology. For example, YouTube, Twitter, Telegram, and so on. They always use image with a high impact. So they speak exactly our same language. Okay, but using the technology, they have shortened the terror chain. You just need a mobile phone to bring a cyber attack, a strike, a tragedy in your home, okay? And it's very, very dramatic. One of the most dangerous aspects is the narrowcasting. Narrowcasting basically is the transmission of specific content that were created to target a specific audience. Let's see, for example, if I want to transfer this content, for example, to youngster, I can use video clip, I can use video games, I can use also online quiz. And as you see over there, you have Call of Duty, that is a popular video games on gaming application console. You have something like that is called Call to Jihad, okay? Another important aspect of the internet, of course, are social media. Social media allows terrorists to share information in a rapid way to wide audience, but they are also a great resource for counterintelligence. Because if you analyze, for example, specific words in specific area related to specific events, you can also gather information about the activity on specific terrorist group in specific area. That is what is happening, for example, a couple of years ago when, as you see over there, we analyzed the number of messages that were spreading information about the Islamic State. And as you can see, we have a spike in a region that are Saudi Arabia and also Egypt. So they are very important source of information also for modern counterintelligence. But of course, online you can also find any kind of material like a manual to build, for example, a bomb, to build specific drugs, or you can also, for example, prepare and use specific instruments. For example, before we have spoken about transportation, the jammer. It's quite easy today to buy a jammer, and with a jammer you can create serious problems. Okay, you can also use a jammer in a physical attack as a diversionary strategy. Okay, because you can disable physical access control systems. But as I told you before, probably one of the most interesting aspects is also the information gathering. If I need to prepare a cyber attacks or a physical attacks, probably online I will have all the information that I need. I can have a map of the area. I can have information about which are the offices that are near my targets, which are, for example, passive instruments for physical control. I can also analyze information in images that are available on the internet and also extract metadata from those information. Another usage, of course, are the encryption channel. In the first phase, we assisted to the use of a custom-made application. They were initially published and deployed also on official channel. I'm thinking, for example, Google Play. Later, they have been removed, but appeared in dark web and in many forums that were visited by terrorist group. Of course. We had an evolution in this phenomenon, and the terrorist group started using exactly our same tools. For example, Telegram, as we said before, is a very important source for a group of terrorists. You can find specific channels that spread any kind of information about specific geographic area, specific indication about how to meet how to follow specific situation, or where you find specific information also on the dark web. Another possibility is to buy, for example, fake documents. It's quite easy to buy fake documents also on the dark web, and you can pay to receive fake documents related to many countries. For example, UK, I have found UK, Syria, but there are a lot of websites in the dark web that can offer you any kind of documents. But probably one of the most aspects today are the darknet. Why the darknet? Do you know the difference between the deep web and the dark web? Basically, the deep web is everything that is on the clear net, okay, on the internet, but cannot be reached by common search engine. For example, also your email account is in the deep web, but is not a terrorist content. The dark web is another thing. The dark web are specific infrastructure that are that leverage on the internet, but they are able also to hide your IP address. Basically, under specific condition, you can you can work online in an anonymous way. That's why all the activity that you see over there, so propaganda, purchasing of weapons, counterfeit documents, recruiting, you can download malicious software, hacking tools, fundraising, and also doxing, are available on the darknet. To give you a confidence of which is the concern, Izumi Nagamitsu, I apologize for my pronunciation, that is the chief of the UN Disarmament Affairs, stated he is very concerned by the darknet and the possibility that terrorist organizations can find on the darknet every kind that they need to prepare weapons of mass destruction. But they pointed out also another aspect. They pointed out new technologies, for example, 3D printing. I can have the 3D print blueprint of, for example, a weapon, okay? I can easily transfer this file all over the world in an anonymous way, and in another place of the world, someone can just buy a 3D printer and print a component, for example, a weapon that could be also mounted, dismounted in a way that is not easy to recognize. So I can use, for example, plastic material, and I can also bypass physical checks in some spaces. This is the approach that was also followed by the UK government. Recently, the UK police has distributed this leaflet where they are saying basically that accessing the dark web could be a sign of terrorism. So what does it mean? Basically, they are saying this, if you know a youngster, if you know someone that is trying to spread information on the darknet, please report them to the law enforcement. But another aspects very important are, for example, the virtual currencies. Why virtual currencies? For many reasons. Regarding the virtual currencies like Bitcoin, but there are a lot of virtual currencies today, for example, Monero, that is more anonymous than Bitcoin. There are different opinions. For example, some research groups believe that for the fundraising of a group like the Islamic State is not a real threat, actually. I believe that instead, for small cell, it's a real threat because small cell need really a small amount of money that, for example, could be easily transferred in Bitcoin. But also virtual currency could also be used under a specific intelligence point of view to destabilize let me say, a state where there is, for example, not a strong government, because you are trying to infiltrate the economic system. And lone actors can use this kind of technology anyway. And other aspect of virtual currencies are the blockchain. Blockchain, let me say, are the basis of the virtual currencies. If you don't know what is a blockchain, blockchain is more or less of a public registry that you cannot delete. Okay, you cannot delete it because it was designed in a way that you cannot delete because he took the history of every transaction. Now, in the feed of every transaction, you can also hide specific content. What this means? This means that we can see also in the next months that a group of terrorists start publish inside some field of blockchain-specific propaganda content. And you will never be able to delete that content. So you can, if you publish something on a social network, you can ask the social network to remove that content. It's not easy, but it's possible. If you write something in the blockchain, it will be forever. And there is the concrete risk they will abuse the blockchain also for these aspects. Cyber-terrorism, what means cyber-terrorism? Basically, the possibility to use the technology instruments in order to target a specific critical infrastructures. Many cyber experts believe that today, probably groups like the Islamic States has no specific cyber capabilities. But as we said before, they can grow up in a rapid way. Okay, it's quite easy. It's quite easy because it's very easy to find online any kind of tools today to perform any kind of attacks. It's quite easy because the economy of attacks is always on the side of the attacker. So the attacker spend one, the defender have to spend probably 100 to defend this system. So it's quite easy. But there is also the possibility that Islamic States and many other groups will hire also cyber mercenary. And this is not a theory. It's also already happened. Exactly 1 year ago, it was reported that some group linked to the Islamic State were trying to recruit specific hackers in the Indian underground. Now you have to know that the Indian underground is composed by probably the best hackers worldwide. It's a very crowded underground. And they were offering $10,000 to this guy. Now imagine a young guy that probably can earn $100 that received that amount of money. They were offering that amount of money just to hack a government website. So it's very scary. And which is the response of governments? And we are closing now. Basically, we have two different aspects. One aspect is related, of course, to regulation, to the law. So China, but also Russia, for example, are promoting new regulation in order to track terrorists. But, of course, there are many privacy issues. Because if you want to track, probably you are violating the privacy of someone. So probably we are in a moment where there is a choice that you have to make. You want privacy, you want security, which is the right balance. And on the other side, we are assisting to almost every government to the creation of specific cyber units that are dedicated to the investigations in the darknet, for example. Let me bring the example of the UK government that just in these days is recruiting people to add to a specific unit inside the NSA that is used for investigation in the dark web. Something like similar was done in Germany more than a year ago, where it was created a specific unit, cyber unit. And of course, also intelligence agencies like the NSA or the GCHQ are doing the same. News of a couple of weeks ago, in my city, Naples, in Italy, also the Atlantic Alliance has established one of the biggest counter-terrorism centers in the city. So there is a strong response. There is the awareness that we need to consider seriously the threats that is in the cyberspace, and we must do any kind of activity in order to prevent any kind of the abuse that we have seen right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now we listen to Brigadier General Charles about the United States regime.
Thank you. Yeah, first I'd like to thank the IDC, the ICT, Mr. Stern, and Dr. Ganar and Azani for sharing this with us here. A little bit about my background. I was a fighter pilot in the United States Air Force. In my last assignment, they had me start up the Air Force's Cyber Command and also start up U.S. Cybercom. And I tell you that because during that time period, I worked a lot with the Israeli Air Force and the Israeli cyber forces. And I will tell you the relationship between the United States and Israel is tremendously strong. We have the same values, the same trust, and I'm honored to be here now as a civilian here with all of you today. And
So you continue the relationship.
I do, and I hope that, I think that's the only way we're going to be able to defeat this threat if we do it together. And it's very hard, and I'm honored to be here. So with that, I'm going to go through this quickly because I want to make sure Deborah gets a little shot at talking today. I throw this up because this is my cred sheet, I would say. This is the company that I'm now a partner in. And these are just some of the credentials that we have. And the only reason I want to show this to you is that I'm coming to you with a unique perspective right now. I'm coming to you from the private sector. And the private sector in that I'm with the threat every day. What things we've learned, we're doing incident responses. We're responding to all these things we just talked about. I do this every day for a living. Our company does this every day for a living. We talk about, in our discussions, things, people want to talk about the elections and the Russians hacking elections. We were involved in that too. So another nice thing about no longer being in the government, I can also talk about and share information with you. I just don't tell you about who my clients are. Well, where's America right now? We're in a bit of confusion. I will tell you, and that's saying it lightly. For terrorism, I think we have an idea of what terrorism means based on the effect. We take a little simplistic view of it, and we decide that if it's a non-nation state, it could be a terrorist. But we don't really take into fact there's nation states that could be proxies for that. And I will tell you that we can't even define or decide on a definition amongst the government. If you go into our laws, the State Department has a different definition for terrorism than our Justice Department has, and our Department of Defense has a different definition. So if we can't even get our laws to the same definition amongst the federal government and the executive branch, that tells you a little bit about where we're at. As for cyber war, I think we got the idea of the intention and that war is just going to be another extension of politics. We've got that down, and the actors, they need to be nation state. But we're really confused on what cyber war is going to look like. And we'll talk a little more about that later. Cyber crime, we sort of got that down. Monetary, that's easy to grasp. And then, cyber espionage, very similar, but it just changes and it's a nation state. And then cyber-terrorism, we understand a little bit about the effect. I'm going to talk about that a lot more. And once again, non-state actor. So with all this confusion, we also have a wandering attention span in the United States. I would say that we're probably on the third lap around the desert right now in our wandering. We didn't really understand cyber espionage, and it's been a while. The reason we found out about cyber espionage The public didn't know anything about it, but the U.S. government knew about it. And the reason we knew about cyber espionage is that in our own capability as spies that transitioned into the cyber world, we went over to another country and we're looking through their stuff, and guess what we found? We found our stuff. So we would go and say, oh, this is a nice document, it looks very good, it's from one of our defense contractors. And then we'd bring it back to them and say, look where we found this document. And it didn't take long for the public to figure that out either when our airplanes started looking just like Chinese airplanes that came out and just like Russian airplanes. So the public got a little late start on that, and then next thing you know, organized crime got into things. And it was strange that when organized crime got into cyber with America, it became a crime we were appalled at it initially. You know, we were losing our credit card data. But you know what happened? That went downhill. And we became immune to, well, I would say it didn't make any difference anymore. And why? Because when I stole my credit card, I got over it real quick because no matter what charges were on there, the bank took them away. And they gave me a new credit card. And I was back up and running. It became no big deal. For the American public, that's still no big deal because they don't recognize the secondary effect of, to them, they're not paying for it. In reality, they're paying for it because the banks are now, it's working its way around the retailers, the price of our goods go up, so they are paying for it, but the Americans don't understand that. But then I will tell you, when ransomware came around, now it was a big deal because what happened? Businesses can no longer operate. An example of one, they shut down a Toyota car making plant for one day. And one day of that production line not moving, over $1 million was lost by Toyota because that supply chain is so tight that because they didn't produce the amount of cars in that one day from that one plant, they lost $1 million. Now we're paying attention. Now it hurts. Now it's in the pocketbooks and it's with the companies. So now let's go to cyber war. You know, we once again, we're not sure what it is. We talk about it almost being like a nuclear weapon. But I will tell you, I don't think that's what cyber war is going to be about. But we're not sure really what it is yet either. Some say cyber war was Estonia. Some say it's what was going on in Ukraine. But even our friends in NATO don't really understand where that is. And we're trying to get that definition down because if it's an attack on one, it's attack on all. But you haven't seen NATO come together to go after cyber yet. So we're still not sure where that lies. I can tell you that America has made a giant step in it just recently under the Trump administration, but not many people realize the effect of it. When they took U.S. Cyber Command and they made it a separate organization as a combatant command in warfighting globally. What was sort of the unsaid version of that is before, National Security Agency, NSA, is a DoD organization. It's an intelligence organization. And Cyber Command was integrated with them before this happened. They're using the same resources, the same people were in both organizations, using the same tools, the same equipment, the same assets. So what's the big deal now? Well, the big deal now is that as they split these apart, they'll have their own assets, their own people, their own weapons, their own tools, and it really helps out under our laws too, because the NSA people operate under a different set of laws under the foreign surveillance than the military operates under Title 10, being able to protect with lethal force. So I think now you will see the capability of our military now having cyber weapons, and those cyber weapons could possibly be used now to help against the war on terrorism. So, lastly here, about cyber-terrorism, I'm going to talk about that last here. But now I want to talk to you about something that it's a second-order effect of terrorism, and I want to weave it back into cyber-terrorism. And I will tell you that our public, at least in the United States and I think around the world, is very resilient to terrorism. We get hit, we get knocked down, we get back up, we get pissed off, and we go the next day and we get together. You know, like what happened with 9/11 and everything. But I think I tell you that it's because we go after justice. And when justice is made, we feel better about it, and we've got that feeling of we're back in control. So think about the Munich Olympics. Think about, even 9/11. We go find out the individuals who are responsible for it, and then we go break justice to them. I mean, the United States even went to war in Afghanistan to find Osama bin Laden. We were not going to rest until we found the people who did it. Okay, so take that as what's keeping us going here during the terrorism. That's what keeps our society going. That's what keeps us resilient. And now let's talk a little bit about the cyber-terrorism with it. Okay, right now, I would say cyber-terrorism does not exist. Cyber terrorists use cyber, but as an enabling weapon or enabling tool. They use it to radicalize. They use it for recruitment, for finance, and most of all, command and control, which helps make their organization very efficient and it can be very effective. But they haven't gotten to the point of making it into a weapon. But that emerging capability is around the corner, and it's going to be a game changer. And I will tell you that there are some people, even amongst the IDC here in ICT, who say that's not going to happen, not going to be anywhere. But I'll tell you, if nation states had that capability right now, and before nation states, when their capabilities have flown to organized crime, that's why the organized criminals now have the capabilities that they have. And guess what's going to happen next? Why can't nation states also, especially ones that are close to state-sponsored terrorism, why can't those forces flow down there? And soon, why can't organized crime also let some of their capability flow down to terrorism? So I think it's going to be there. And when we prosecute criminals, it's means, opportunity, and motive. I'd say that the terrorists have the motive. I would tell you that the opportunity is there because our critical infrastructure is not well protected, as we got in all these briefs right there, and all they need is the means. And I'll tell you right now, nation states hold those means, organized crime holds those means, soon the terrorists will hold those means. And now, the last thing there is, so what's the second order effect of all this? What I just talked to us about being resilient. What happens when we have cyber terrorism as a weapon? Guess what? I won't know who did it. The whole thing is anonymous. I won't know where it came from. I'm used to tracking terrorists because I know when they come into my country. I spend a lot of money on that, figure out where they are. I also look at the materials they buy to make a bomb. I track all these different things. If a terrorist can use cyber as a weapon, how am I going to track anything? They can have just a simple computer. They can be located anywhere in the world. They can disguise or track all the way to it. They can do their surveillance on the target from out of the country. They only have to be physically present. And when they send their attack and they create a physical terror disruption that goes on, just like a physical bomb going off, I make the same effect through cyber. How are we going to know who they are? How are we going to get justice? Now, what secondary effect, what's that going to do to us? We won't be able to find out who did it, and we won't be able to track them down. What will that do to the public? So I'll leave you with that thought. Should we be preparing now for this to eventually happen, or are we going to have to wait till it happens to us, and then we go try to figure it out? And that's why we started up a global consortium for counter-cyber-terrorism, GC3T. So you can look it up on the web.org. And we're trying to get a group of my colleagues and I together to look at this problem right now before we have it happen to us. Thank you for your time, and hope we have a great discussion.
Thank you very much. Dave, please take your place. Regarding countering cyber terror, we are as an institute working on this. Charles, we are as an institute working on this situation for 6 years now. We believe like you. It could be tomorrow. Even if today it's 0, it could be between 0 to 100 within very short time. And what we are doing now, learning how to deal with this kind of before we were attacked. Thank you.
Hi, so late in the afternoon. I'm going to try to be really focused, but Eitan, I'm delighted and honored to be here. Just a comment, I couldn't have dreamed of a better segue to my opening than my predecessor, Brigadier General Shugg. You opened the door and I'm going to walk in. First of all, can everybody hear me in the back? I'm vertically challenged and sometimes voice challenged, so raise your hand if you can.
Cybercrime.
This is a cybercrime. So I'm delighted to be here and honored to be here. Thank you, Stephen Stern, for making this possible yet again. It's really nice. And I just wanted to note, we had a conversation before this session started about what I think the ICT really manages to do, especially in this session, which is to take the technical experts and the policy experts, and hopefully the legal experts as well, and put them together for a discussion and interchange that's really fairly unique in my experience. I'm going to try to be really focused. Who am I? What am I doing here? I owe everything to Eitan. Thank you so much. And I am associated here with ICT. I teach here. I've also had the privilege to be involved with something called the Tallinn 2 project, which is a project based in the NATO Center of Cyber Excellence up in Tallinn, Estonia. And we put out in beginning of 2017, published a manual on on warfare in cyberspace, a 3-year project that was absolutely fascinating to participate in. So we did take a little bit of, we did take a bite out of the whole question of what cyber warfare actually looks like and what the definitions are. That's for another day. And another really cool project that I'm involved in right now, one of the most fun things we've ever done, I'm suggesting it as a future panel topic, the Millamos project out of McGill University, looking at cyber warfare in outer space. So next panel, maybe next year, maybe the year after. We're going to move away in the next few minutes from the aspects of counterterrorism that we've heard about so far, which are more practical updates, what's going on, what are the technical aspects of how we're dealing with the cyber-terrorism threat vectors and how we've dealt with them on the ground. And we're going to draw back a little bit and look how legal systems, how legal systems have engaged and are engaging with counterterrorism at the level of cyber-terrorism. And we do have some responses in direct sort of answer to your question, the question you posed. We do have some responses that are interesting, and I'm going to throw out an idea that I've been working on and share some of the research that we've been doing on the 2 different types of legal responses that we have internationally and nationally to cyber-terrorism threats. And I'd love to get your input on what that looks like. Any other lawyers in the room? Know thine enemy. Okay, so we have a few. Great. So you guys are going to call me on the things that don't look good. We're going backwards here. So the likelihood of cyber-enabled terrorism taking down critical infrastructure, which we've heard a lot about here today. A train derailed, an airport control tower cyber-blinded so that planes have no traffic control. Scrambled medical data that alters blood types, medications, or treatments for emergency room patients. Hostile hack into heart pacemakers like my dad's, or for selected world leaders. My dad's not a world leader, but there was a Homeland episode on this, and automated hearts, computer hearts, are hackable. In examining how national and international legal systems deal with cyber-terrorism threat vectors, let's start with the Farizi case. Okay, the 2016 case, not yet mentioned today. A U.S. court convicted Ardit Farizi, a Kosovo hacker described by the U.S. Department of Justice as the first terrorist hacker convicted in the U.S., and this was described as a groundbreaking prosecution. Okay, you can read what the Department of Justice had to say about it. The combination of terrorism and hacking, which we've been talking about so far in the session. So Farizi admitted that on or about June 13th, he gained system administration access to a server that hosted the website of a U.S. victim company. You can see here the hack. The website contained databases with PII, personally identifiable data, of tens of thousands of the victim company's customers, including members of the military and other government personnel. So we have over 1,000 U.S. military and other government personnel, personal data hacked, and more than that, a hit list goes out. the Islamic State Hacking Division, which we've heard about similar bodies so far today. A tweet goes out to these people who've been hacked, and this is what it says. Okay, so this is one of the kill lists. Pay attention to the criminal complaint, the bottom part of this slide. This is the list of the crimes with which Arditi was charged. We're going to come back to it when we look at some of the international norms that feed exactly into the US national legislation that actually deals with charging someone with utilizing cyberspace in order to supply a terrorist group with a kill list. How do we nab that person, and what do we do with that person? This is a success, the first successful US use of these criminal, these parts of the US Penal Code, the US Criminal Code, to actually do so. We're going to look at three aspects of what lawyers are doing internationally and nationally in order to cope exactly with these types of incidences. We're going to look at legal measures nationally, internationally, and then some trends and conclusions. We'll try to do it in 10 minutes or under. So in the past, if we look at what international law, maybe I'll do, is this microphone takeawayable? We'll try this.
Can you help with the neck mic?
I'd rather not. We'll see how much dancing around I can avoid here. So this is what what's that? I'm working hard. I get extra pay for that, right? So when international law wakes up in the morning, this is what it does. At the heart, we have treaties. They're the most important, so contracts among states and international organizations, mostly. State behavior is key, right? You have to show that states are actually taking this stuff seriously. General principles of law, such as if you signed an agreement, you need to actually carry out that agreement. And international academic scholars put themselves into the pyramid of sources of law, so scholarly articles are also important. So this was in the past. We really saw that national laws, and I'm generalizing here, but national laws were really an interesting output of norms set out at the international plane. Then each country would say, okay, I've signed on to this treaty, I'm now going to implement these norms, and this was in a myriad areas of law. Again, I'm oversimplifying, but just for the sake of argument. What I think we're seeing in the cyber-terrorism context is something new and different, and that is that we're seeing national laws, because of the sequence of events and the bitter results of actual terrorist incidents, we're seeing national laws moving faster than the international law on this, and national laws are in fact inputting into the international law space. Why is this important, and what difference does it make? Well, we take these two, I'm going to put this all up here to save some time. If, for example, a key distinction that several of the interlocutors here have mentioned, key distinction in the law in general, national law and international law, has been, yeah, we have terrorist leverage and use of the internet. That's one category of activity. And we also have cyber-enabled terrorism, which, again, we haven't seen yet. This was a key distinction and remains a key distinction in legal systems. And again, at the national level, we see that, sorry about that, slight separation, depends on the country, between cybercrime and cyber-terrorism. The reason that this here's a reverse sort of movement of the dynamic of how the law is developed, is that we're seeing the influence of this move from the national level, so a combination of these two, we're seeing in international law, in laws, and we'll see this in a second, and that is in turn influencing the international scheme of things. So let's dive in a little bit, and I'm going to ask you to bear with me for a bit. You're going to need to do a little bit of reading together with me, and we're going to look at some instances about how laws actually deal with cyber-terrorism, in fact. I'm going to put this all up here. You guys can all read fast. And you're hearing me okay in the back, right? Okay. So we're going to start with on the home field, the relatively new Israel law on counter-terrorism. Approximately a little more than a year ago, this was passed. And what you're reading, this is the English translation of sort of the goals of the law. This will seem very familiar to most of you who work in cyber-terrorism, in counter-terrorism. So key here is one of the following was either threatened or had a real danger of occurring. Again, this will be familiar. Physical injury to a person's body or freedom, severe injury to public safety or to property, to religious objects, and here, wait for it, this was an innovation. Severe damage to infrastructure systems or basic services, or severe interference with them, or severe damage to the national economy or ecosystem. Now, this is not an unusual addition to anti-terrorism laws in countries around the world. But notice carefully that we don't see the word cyber here. We don't see the word electronic databases here. The Israeli law leaves this infrastructure systems or basic services as kind of an overall wrapping for the targets of terrorism. Could be cyber-terrorism, could be biological terrorism, could be nuclear terrorism. The law doesn't say. So this is one approach, and this is an approach that other countries, Canada, for example, India, for example, that have taken to go for the results-oriented definition of what a terrorist act is. Here at the ICT, we spent some time before the Israeli law was published, actually a lot of time and effort, trying to stuff in the explanations of the law, at least, if not the wording itself, the word cyber, or the concept cyber, and we weren't successful, but I think it's okay. I think we've covered our bases. We still don't know. We still don't have any case law on that. But this is one approach, okay? The second approach, the different approach, and here we're seeing the influence of events on the ground. I'm sorry. Which countries are cyberized? The UK, the US, Egypt, France, Australia, sorry, and the EU, we'll see at the end, have actually inserted into their anti-terrorism laws cyber-relevant definitions. So for example, the Australians write this, and again, I'm thanking you all for doing the hard part of reading the slides. So take a look at this. The Australians don't leave anything in doubt in terms of what the means of this terrorist act is. It's got to be, or it can include, an information system being targeted, telecommunication system, financial system. All this is cyber-specific stuff, right? Interesting. Relatively new development. Same thing in the UK. Designed seriously to interfere with or to seriously disrupt an electronic system, cyber. Finally, Egypt, which was a little bit surprising. This is a 2015 law. And the Egyptians, again, not for any identifiable specific reason that I could find in my research, but here we have harm to communications, information, financial, or banking systems. So these are some examples. We have a database of about tens of laws look like in this respect. I would point out that we're also sort of on a tipping point for all European countries. This is the March 2017 European directive on terrorist offenses and offenses related to a terrorist group. And you can see this is sort of foreshadowing. I've redlined it for you a little bit. The definition of terrorist offenses, again, fairly new. All European Union countries are committed to adapting their legislation to this definition. Extensive destruction to a government or public facility, including an information system. So this is brilliant. Why is it brilliant? And why do I think personal view, why do I think it's important to cyberize national legislations like this? Because this way, you're also protecting data. It's not only, we've talked about critical infrastructures, very important to protect them, but critical infrastructures still feels very kinetic and physical to us, right? It's airports, as Oren explained, it's trains. Here we have data covered. And I think that's the main difference. And if there's one takeaway from this that I'd love you to bring out of the room from this distinction among national legislation, channel one, anti-terrorism, counter-terrorism legislation that works, that looks at a result, and probably includes cyber-enabled terrorism. I like the fact that the cyberization of certain countries' legislation on counterterrorism really, really focuses us on data and how much it needs to be protected. Moving on to an interesting example of China, sort of in the middle. And I'm just noting this because I really don't know where to categorize it. Maybe you guys have some ideas. So the 2015 Counter-Terrorism law, China, and I'm not a Chinese reader, so I've worked with a few translations on this. Different approach overall to counterterrorism, of course. What we've got is what I'm calling defensive cyberization. What do I mean by that? Again, if there are native Chinese readers in the room, then this is probably going to look ridiculous, but I've put a few translations together and compared them. So terrorism is included in definitions of terrorism are causing or creating social panic. I'm not sure I know what that is, but it's certainly a different approach. This is not the time to go into that kind of a definition. Terrorist activity, again, social disorder and other serious social harm activities, that's a doctorate in and of itself. What I want to get to is that the mention of cyberization or the cyberization of the Chinese terrorism efforts are from the opposite direction. So, and some of you probably know this, telecommunications operators and internet service providers are going to need to cooperate with the state apparatus in order to nab infractions that will include cyber-terrorism. And not only that, you have the other one, yeah. Telecommunications, internet, finance, and business, all of these areas of business operations and service providers, they're going to need to identify customers' identities so that anyone who's online is identified. Again, it would be great to hear from someone who works in the field and can say actually how this is enforced. Sort of good luck with that. So there may be a very large gap between what's written in the law and what actually happens, but this is what we're looking specifically at what the new Chinese law is doing with its approach to cyberization. So it's cyberization, but from sort of a different point of view, a different aspect. Really quickly, we all know that none of this happens in a vacuum. I'm gonna take a really quick glance at what's happening on the international sphere, because I promised sort of the input between what's going on nationally and what's going on internationally. So really quickly, the international legal measures that are being developed, I think are likely to be more comprehensive than the national laws. Why? They're less reactive, more contemplative, they take a lot longer. States need to be willing to be bound to international norms that are being developed in this respect, and that takes a lot of groundwork. Some would say it's even impossible in the current geopolitical situation. But it's a different product trying to address the same problem, which is the global challenge of cyber-terrorism. What do we have here? Well, we have an academic definition. I was part of this International Law Association working group that put together a basic common ground definition of what cyber-terrorism might look like. I'm not thrilled with it, but it's sort of a starting point for international discussions. We have one example of a treaty, the ASEAN Convention on Counter-Terrorism from 2007 that mentions cyber-terrorism. Nobody else does. But I will not leave you. I will not be able to sleep tonight if I don't mention the Budapest Convention on Cybercrime. Has anyone in the audience heard of this? Raise your hand. Okay, great. So we'll have 40 more people in the world who know about this convention by the end of my presentation. This is an early European-based 2001 successful effort to codify cybercrimes on the international plane. And we're going to tie this back to the case study that we mentioned at the very beginning about the terrorist case from 2016 where the US charged somebody with cyber-terrorism. So this convention does something really simple and really important. These numbers are numbers of the articles of the convention. The convention defines very clearly different types of cybercrime. It shied away from defining cyber-terrorism, but that's still okay, because you can take any one of these crimes and turn them into a terrorism offense if you have the political will within your national legislation. So part one, common definitions, which is great and important. It's a global challenge, we need global definitions. And part two is that any country who signed on to this treaty, Israel signed on last September, about 50 countries have signed on in general. You're required to include in your national legislation these definitions. Okay, so Article 2, which was the article used by the United States Department of Justice to convict this young man here, used exactly this article 2 definition from the Budapest Convention, okay, in a cyber-terrorism context. So what I'm trying to tie together here is that we've got national laws that exist here on this sort of, I guess, parallel level, let's say a little bit lower, and then international norms that come above it in sort of an overarching way and say, yeah, this same definition is going to apply within the US and in the jurisdictions of about the other 40 other countries who are signed on to this treaty. We're moving fast, right? We have all set? Another few hours? Okay. Okay. This is another really important aspect of counterterrorism, I think, which has not yet been picked up in the same way that others have mentioned that cyber-enabled terrorism has not yet been seen. We've not yet seen, I think, the full scope of the application of this quite powerful article in the UN Security of the UN Charter operated by the UN Security Council, and not many folks, not even international lawyers, know about this. So you're being brought into the secret chamber here. So Article 39, which a lot of us are familiar with, says the Security Council shall determine the existence of any threat to the peace, breach of the peace, or active aggression, and shall make recommendations or decide what measures shall be taken. So under Article 39, Chapter 7 of the Charter, the Security Council makes resolutions, issues resolutions that bind countries internationally. No arguments. Article 41 is little used. It's in the same section, so it also binds countries internationally. And look what it's got here. Remember, this is from the 1940s. So Article 41 says the Security Council can cut off postal services, which would probably be a good thing these days, cut off the telegraph. Not many of us would feel that is a painful issue, but this other means of communication thing, really, it's hard not to see how this couldn't be used, for example, to cut off internet connections for a region, for certain parties. It's an interesting, still theoretical discussion whether the UN Security Council can do the opposite. In other words, if a country has cut off internet for sort of to quell civil unrest or for other reasons to stop protest, can the UN security compel that country to then operate its internet again, or compel other countries to supply internet from the sides? But that's an interesting international law topic, I think, that has nothing to do with today's discussion. So we'll leave that aside. But take a look at this and sort of roll around in your minds what the potential is for using these powers of the Security Council in a counterterrorism context. Here's one example. Again, should be familiar to a lot of us. UN Security Council Resolution 2178 from September 2014. To prevent terrorists from exploiting technology, communications, and resources to incite support for terrorist acts. Here's the hard part: while respecting human rights and fundamental freedoms. Not even going to go there, probably an impossible task. But this is what put in place, for example, in the German national law, in the UK national law, and other national laws, the mechanisms for what Oren was discussing before about the barcode on our airline tickets, mapping out exactly where each one of us, including the terrorists among us, anywhere in the world. So the extent of international cooperation on the basis of this resolution and, of course, other cooperative efforts is, it really comes to the fore at the international level in these kinds of resolutions. We're getting there. Another doctoral study, if anybody's interested, is to take a close look at how far ahead particular sectors, such as the financial sector internationally, have moved ahead with legislative-like experts that are binding at an international level for counterterrorism. So the money trail, very well covered by the FATF under the OECD aegis, and a great job being done in terms of both international cooperation and national legislation to follow the money trail. I won't go into details, but we don't have time. Let's look ahead at the international level. So where we're all stuck in this counterterrorism challenge globally as international lawyers it's very clear clear point of, and source of frustration. So the UN Draft Comprehensive Convention Against Terrorism stuck for, 12 years, 13 years, around the definition of what a terrorist act is. So the UN has put together this wonderful draft treaty. It's gone nowhere and probably will go nowhere because no one can agree on what a terrorist act is. What we do have is this definition in Article 2. Having heard and seen sort of how national legislations and other international bodies have mapped this definition out, you can take a look and you can see that there's no reference, there's no cyber reference here. You might want to say serious damage to public or private property works, but it's a stretch. So this is a dead letter in more ways than one. However, we do have, before we get to conclusions, we're about to wrap, we do have that European Union piece of legislation which is going to, within sort of 4 or 5 years, with a little bit of luck, have 23, 24 nations of Europe on the same page in terms of defining their counterterrorism legislation to include cyber-enabled legislation, which will cover terrorist use of the internet and actual kinetic results to a to a cyber-enabled terrorist act when it happens. Trends and conclusions really quickly. Existing criminal law statutes, some of which we've seen, to include cyber-enabled terrorism. I'm in favor of it. Others say go for a results-oriented piece of legislation, and then you cover everything, including kinds of terrorism that we don't know about yet. The International Law Counter-Terrorism Project is a little bit stuck and a little bit moving ahead, depends which angle you're coming from, but it's dynamic and it's developing. A Model UN Security Council resolution, which was one of the recommendations that we made in our ILA study group, didn't happen. And as most of us already understand, the geopolitics of UN Security Council resolutions, including those ones that are not made, mean that this is really a sort of blowing in the wind kind of effort. If the constellation, if the stars are right, then it happens. If the stars are not right, then it doesn't happen. A final challenge that I just want to share with you, and then I'll wrap. Herb Lynn, who used to work, I think he's ex-DOD in the US, if I'm not wrong, and Jacqueline Kerr have just put out a chapter, it's going to be published next year in the Oxford Handbook on Cybersecurity, and they've sort of bookmarked for us a new kind of cyber criminal activity that may in the end turn into a piece of the puzzle for cyber-terrorism, and the title of our conference is The Puzzle and Putting the Pieces Together. So we all know and sort of feel in our bones this whole new challenge of data manipulation as a part of information warfare, cyber hostility, however you want to frame it. Within that frame, we're all still kind of looking at how we want to define these hostile acts that deal with data. I would like to leave all of us with the question of whether we want to start thinking about how we include data morphing, data changing, data altering in definitions of cyber-terrorism, and whether we have adequate resources currently in national legislation and in international documents to do so, or whether it will have to wait for the next iteration of this international project. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Deb. Now I'm less concerned because I know, based on all these regulations, that the global jihadists, specifically ISIS, are really compliant to the new regulations. So I feel more comfortable now. One question. Who wants to ask? Okay, my friend.
On the legal side, the United States, as I understand, has the Patriot Act, which allows you to decide that a crime has been committed. If I send from Israel to you in Turkey, US dollars, they go to New York, I've committed a crime. If that is an illegal transaction, I've committed a crime in America. Most of these things are money related somewhere. And I'm just wondering whether there's a way to encourage the UK, the EU, Switzerland, Singapore, countries with currencies that criminals want to use, to adopt the Patriot Act, so that somewhere you've got the linkage to an extradition criminals is, I'm going to send US dollars or Singapore dollars or Swiss francs or English pounds. Can I then extradite?
I'm grabbing that question. You're absolutely right. And we're assuming that the monetary transfer, that you're not sending money to a Nigerian prince who wants help getting back on the throne, right? You're absolutely right. You're on the money with that answer. And it's happening. So there are, in fact, under the OECD, FATF cooperation arrangements, not as formal as they should be, but tight cooperation in following those money trails. Absolutely true. It's, we don't have time to go into the whole issue that you raised of jurisdiction. So where I thought you were going with that is, so how do we know which legal system and which court is then authorized to exercise its jurisdiction over that? That is a whole other presentation. Yes, absolutely usable, but perhaps not necessary, since we're using electronic. So the answer is yes and yes.
Somebody else want to answer here? So thank you very much. Stephen, please.
Oren, the question is, since you have mentioned that for very little money you could buy on Amazon devices that could cause enormous havoc, whether on the railroads or on any place in the system, why don't you see the incidence of teenagers wanting to do pranks, do this, not jihadists, but just guys getting drunk and wanting to have some fun?
All right. Thank you, Stephen. Actually, there were incidents. In Czechoslovakia, there was an incident with a train where a kid bought an infrared remote, and the trains in Czechoslovakia are controlled by that, the transferred attraction. So he went with a remote control, like the remote controls that you actually use to control the television, learn the VCR, learn the laser play and everything, and he flipped the train. He derailed it. So here it is. You got it.
Thank you very much. See you.